In the deep places of the world, there is a sound that orcs fear more than the roar of a dragon or the scream of a Nazgul. It is not a spell of magic, nor the horn of a great king. It is the low, rhythmic chanting of a Durin's folk, followed by the wet crunch of iron biting into bone. History remembers the Fellowship of the Ring for its wizard, its king, and its ring-bearer. We sing songs of Aragorn's lineage and Gandalf's wisdom. We tell tales of the sacrifices of Boromir and the resilience of the hobbits. But often, amidst the legends of elves and men, one warrior is forgotten, or worse, he is remembered as a jester. But in the darkness of the Hornburg, when the rain lashed down and the walls were breached, it was not the elf who held the caves against the tide of darkness. It was a single dwarf wielding a heavy axe, who built a wall of corpses so high that the enemy could no longer climb over it. If you have only witnessed The War of the Ring through the lens of the Peter Jackson films, you likely know Gimli, Son of Glóin, as a source of amusement. He is the comic relief. He is the one who is tossed across chasms, the one who complains about the distance, the one who is mocked by Legolas for his height and his manners. In the movies, he is a bumbling sidekick, often used to lighten the mood when the darkness grows too heavy. A rough, unrefined caricature of the noble race of dwarves, seemingly obsessed with food and grog. But for those who have walked the pages of Tolkien's legendarium, this portrayal is not merely incomplete. It is a betrayal. For in the text, Gimli was no clown. He was a terrifying engine of destruction, a poet of stone, and perhaps the most lethal warrior to ever walk in the company of the king. Therefore, it may surprise you to learn that the funny dwarf you remember was actually a monster in battle and a philosopher at heart. To understand the true nature of Gimli, we must first look to his soul, long before the Battle of Helm's Deep. We must look to the golden wood of Lothlorien. In the films, Gimli is portrayed as being awkward and grumpy in the presence of Galadriel, but in the books, this meeting defines him. Thousands of years prior, the greatest elf who ever lived, Fëanor, asked Galadriel for a single strand of her hair. He did this 3 times, and 3 times she refused him, for she saw the darkness and arrogance in his heart. Yet, when Gimli, a dwarf, a race often despised by elves, stood before her, he asked for nothing. When pressed, he asked for a single strand of hair to treasure as a memory of her light. Galadriel looked into his soul and saw no greed, only pure admiration. She gave him not 1, but 3 strands. This was a gesture of earth-shattering significance. It proved that Gimli possessed a nobility of spirit that exceeded even the high elves of old. He was not a comic relief. He was the Lockbearer, chosen by the Lady of Light herself. But if his soul was made of light, his arm was made of iron. To see this, we must look to the night of the Battle of the Hornburg. In the films, this is played for laughs, a competition of numbers between friends. But in the books, the reality was horrific. During the breach of the Deeping Wall, Eomer, the Marshal of the Mark, was cut off. He was surrounded by Uruk-hai, stumbling, preparing to die. It was not Aragorn who saved him. Out of the shadows charged Gimli. He did not make a joke. He did not stumble. He swung his axe with such ferocity that he hewed the legs from beneath the Uruks and decapitated 2 of them in a single motion. Tolkien writes that Gimli was separated from the others, driven back into the glittering caves behind the fortress. In the movie, the caves are just a hiding place for women and children. But in the book, the caves were a second front. The Uruk-hai breached the culvert and flooded into the caves, intending to slaughter the refugees. Gimli stood alone in the dark. He did not have Legolas's bow or Aragorn's sword. He had only his axe and his rage. He fought with a cold, dwarven fury that terrified the men of Rohan. He did not just kill, he dismantled the enemy. He fought until the wood of his axe handle was slick with black blood, and the iron of his blade was notched from the splitting of helmets. By the time dawn broke, Gimli sat upon a pile of 42 Uruk-hai corpses. 42 one more than the Prince of Mirkwood. And he did not achieve this by shooting arrows from a safe distance, but by looking the enemy in the eye as he took their lives. This competition between him and Legolas was not a game of joy. It was a way for two warriors to cope with the overwhelming tide of death surrounding them. It was a tally of survival. But Gimli's strength was not just in his arm, it was in his voice. The movies would have you believe dwarves are greedy, obsessed only with gold and mithril. But listen now to how Gimli describes the glittering caves to Legolas. This is not the speech of a greedy miner. It is the speech of a lover. And Legolas, when the torches are kindled and men walk on the sandy floors under the echoing domes, then gems and crystals and veins of precious ore glint in the polished walls, and the light glows through folded marbles, shell-like, translucent as the living hands of Queen Galadriel. He speaks of the stone not as something to be mined and sold, but as something to be tended and loved, like a garden. He tells Legolas he would pay gold just to stand there, not to take. This is the true Gimli, a warrior capable of 42 murders in a single night, yet possessing a soul sensitive enough to weep at the beauty of a quartz vein, a complexity that the films, for all their glory, stripped away. His story did not end with the destruction of the ring. While the movies show the Fellowship drifting apart, the books tell us that Gimli became a builder of kingdoms. He led a colony of his people south to the glittering caves, which he named Aglarond. There, he became the lord of the glittering caves. He did not mine them for profit. He polished them. He turned the caves into one of the wonders of the world, illuminating them with lamps of crystal so that all could see their beauty. Furthermore, he used his skills to heal the wounds of the war. He and his dwarves marched to Minas Tirith, the White City, which had been shattered by the siege. It was Gimli's people who rebuilt the great gate of the city. They forged it not of wood and iron, but of mithril and steel, a gate that would never again be broken by the Witch King or any engine of war. He literally rebuilt the defenses of men, ensuring their safety for the Fourth Age. He remained the closest friend of King Elisar and Legolas Greenleaf, traveling across Middle-earth, uniting the races of dwarves and elves in a way that had never been seen before. But the greatest testament to his character came at the very end of his life. In the year 120 of the Fourth Age, King Aragorn passed away. The light of the Fellowship was fading. Legolas built a gray ship in Ithilien, intending to sail west to the Undying Lands, to Valinor. But he could not bear to leave his friend behind. And so Gimli, son of Glóin, did something that no dwarf had ever done since the breaking of the world. He stepped onto an elven ship. This is a detail often missed. The Undying Lands are forbidden to mortals. Dwarves were not created by Eru Ilúvatar, but by Aula the Smith. They have no place in the West, yet the Valar, the gods themselves, made an exception for Gimli. Why? Some say it was because of his love for Galadriel, and that she from the West prayed for him to be allowed entry so he could see her light one last time. But I believe it was because his friendship with Legolas was so pure, so absolute, that it transcended the ancient laws of Middle-earth. It was a friendship that healed the ancient rift between their races. So, the next time you see the movies, and you hear the dwarf make a joke about tossing, or see him fall from his horse, remember the truth. Remember the 3 strands of hair from the Lady of Light. Remember the 42 bodies piled high at the glittering caves. Remember the poet who wept at the beauty of stone, and the builder who forged the gates of kings. And remember the only dwarf who was loved enough by the elves to be granted a seat in paradise. He was no jester, he was the Lockbearer, and he was a monster of the light.